Hey everyone, welcome to the Game Dev Local podcast. I'm your host Tom Morgan and I'm here with the lovely Stuart Ville. Say hey, Stu. Okay, cool. So today we're going to be talking about the state of the industry in 2025. Many of you might have seen that Matthew Ball, who is CEO of Epsilon investment company, has recently brought out a report which it's a big report. It's a big report. It's over 100 slides of really useful information, but it paints
like 200 plus, isn't it?
Is it? Okay, yeah. So I just read it, so yeah, I'm surprised I forgot already. But yeah, it is great and really interesting, but it paints quite a stark image of where the games industry is at. And as we all know, it's been some challenging times recently, so me and Stu thought we'd get together and have a little chat about it. I'm going to be like a doomsayer, Stu. I'm going to say, like, it's going down, it's terrible, bad things are coming, and you're going to tell me, no, it's all roses, and there's a way through all of this trouble. Can you do that?
I think between the two of us, we'll get to a nice balance for sure, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a challenging time, but yeah, there are ways for it. So, yeah, thanks very much. And everyone knows Stu, so we don't need any intros. Yeah. How have you been, Stu? What have you been up to?
Been hanging out with you quite a lot, haven't I?
That is true. Yep, that is true.
Just, yeah, business as usual for us, isn't it? Meetings left, right and centre. But yeah, we just, if you just attended our Global Game Jam event, then congratulations. Hopefully you made a game, and hopefully that was fun. And we'll see you again at the next one.
Yeah, that was a cool experience for me, attending my first game jam, just seeing people like sleeping on the floor from the night before, having their naps, and then like pizza boxes and sweets and crisps everywhere, and obviously people making awesome games. Yeah, the bubble theme was interesting. We saw quite a cool... What was that game that there was someone who came up with quite a cool concept around the bubble
So there
theme,
was
right?
a couple of... But the coolest one that we saw, I think the one that I think you're talking about, is where they've taken the bubble concept as like a meta concept, and it was to do with your political bubble and how it was like I think it was a card-based game, and you had to battle against or figure out what the truth is.
Yeah, very clever.
Yeah,
very
that's what I
deep
like to
as well.
see in these kind of games.
I think it'd be way too deep for me, but it was a very cool concept for a game jam concept. So, yeah, no, we have been busy, lots going on, and I guess it's the start of a new year. Although we're getting into February, but so yeah, there's been. Last year was tough, a lot of big studio closures and the smaller ones as well. And we've had news of Ubisoft today, so there's been some bad news, and yeah, there's definitely been some challenges. But I guess for a lot of our viewers, it's nice to think, the games industry is still booming in a lot of different ways. And actually there are a lot of ways to cut through some of these challenges and get over some of these hurdles. So that's kind of what we want to break down today a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone hasn't checked out the report from Matthew Ball, it's Epsilon investment company. Just Google that and check them out on LinkedIn, and you'll be able to find really interesting report. So I guess the first thing to come round to is that at the start of the report, we've seen that there's quite a large plateau in terms of the industry growth. So consumer spend, average weekly hours play for gamers, VC funding, even like the gaming companies' stock prices, all of them have been underperforming or plateauing or, really shrinking down. So, yeah. I mean, of course, these reports cover from the biggest companies down to the smallest. So I guess to you, Stu, if you were one of our indie devs listening in, what would be your general advice if, when preparing for this year and beyond, if you're making a studio, making a game?
Yeah, so I think there's two key things. One is that all of the statistics that are coming out right now are still, I wouldn't say skewed as such, but they're still. This is still an effect of the COVID blip, right? During the COVID years, there was a just insane surge in people playing games, money spent on games. Everyone was at home, and that's also why we've seen the death of some studios, because everyone decided to spend, and then not very many or people didn't plan well enough so that when the bubble popped, we lost lots of studios, and people lost money, people lost jobs, and we've been seeing the effect of that ongoing from then. And it does mean, so if you were looking at a chart for the success of games, we were just on this like nice upward, always going up, number goes up always. And the other thing about that is that, you know, that the money that was being made there is by like the top end of the games industry. There's lots and lots of people at the bottom end or middle and bottom end who aren't making a ton of money, but it's all accumulative. So it was always number goes up. And then during COVID, it just spiked. It went from this nice up to like an insane up. Yeah. And then afterwards, I think people thought that it might come back to like an original baseline. No one expected like a massive dip, I don't think. I mean, if you're smart, then you knew there was going to be a massive dip. But I think too many people didn't think it was going to dip too far. They thought this was kind of more like a new normal, and that, everyone just did well during that time. But what we have seen is, investors have been way, way, way more cautious. And publishers also have been way, way, way more cautious, because you can't, like during COVID, you could just like back a whole bunch of projects and see some form of success. Obviously not like any old project, but, you know, it was a lot easier. And so, we've just been seeing this like drop and drop and drop and drop and drop. So where these stats come out is quite a fair few of us think that this is like the bottom end of that drop. And like you said, we're seeing some plateau and stuff. So it does seem like we're not going to get much lower, and that we should start seeing everything going back up again. But this does mean that, you need to be really savvy. You need to know where the growth potential is and what you can do for you and your studio. A lot of this is, I would say, it's more important now than ever before for if you're starting a studio or making a game as a bunch of people that you want to make money with, then you need to look at the games that are out there. You need to look at where is the market saturated, where is there a niche. Are there any niches left? We've covered a lot over like the last 10 years. Niches and subgenres have really been built out. Like, where is there like something new? And in some cases, you are going to need a bit of luck. But certainly, if you're just going to go make, or if you're going to try and make the next big game, you know, you can't just look at Minecraft and think, oh yeah, we can do like a massive sandboxy thing, and then we can work with IPs and it'll work just as well. Like, no,
people have tried.
People have tried. And you know, and even if it's not that, there are other games out there that are other game genres out there that you might think are. I love those kind of games. I'd love to make that kind of game myself. But actually, you really need to do a lot more analysis of the market, and then you need to figure out if your team can make that game.
I guess it's not as if you can't even go for a saturated market, but if you're going to do that, you really need to understand who are the players in that, what are the possible highs and get to, what are the kind of potential lows that might happen, what are some of the worst games, what are some of the best games, and why are they there, and what is the community that surrounds that, and what do that community care about, and how can I target them in a way that they're really asking for. And I guess we'll come on to more of the discoverability and marketing sides a bit later, but I absolutely think you're right, and gaming is here to stay, right? You're absolutely right. There's been a big boom, we've had a correction, and there was a lot of foreign investment during COVID and irresponsible spending, and we're paying the price for it a little bit since, but gaming is still, in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of our minds, is the most powerful sort of entertainment medium on the planet, really. So it's not going anywhere yet, and we're seeing lots of growth in other areas as well. I
think we've had quite a few years of people having just having pure fun making games, and some of those people have had a certain amount of success, and times were slightly easier for them. So we were hearing a lot of them like in like giving talks and stuff or on panels, and they would say, "Well, the most important thing for me was that we were having fun, and having fun meant that we made a really good game." And to a certain extent, you do need to have that within your team. Like, sad people don't make great games, but yeah, it was a lot easier. Like, you didn't have to. Well, at least the people that had that success, they were having fun. They made a good game, and they hit something out there in the market. And whether that was like good intuition or like the market that they were aiming for wasn't so saturated. Like, all of these factors meant that it was an easier ride, and that I just think doesn't exist anymore. Like, if you really want to make games like your full-time thing, then you have to take it a lot more serious than we've ever had to before.
Yeah, we were having this discussion earlier, weren't we? That and you said earlier that making a game on its own is not enough nowadays. You need to have lots of other aspects. You need to know how to run a business, market a game, how to kind of set up a company, hire people in. There's so many different aspects. And at the end of the day, it's an art form, it's an entertainment form, but it is also a business. And so there's all of those aspects that kind of come underneath it, which are important considerations. So, yeah. Do you think it's looking bleak for indie devs this year, or do you think there's positives to be had?
I don't think it's looking bleak so much. I think, like I say, if you're serious about if you really love making games and you really want to do it full time, actually there was something that was said earlier in one of the meetings that we were in earlier, which was like, if you want to make games, like, then don't start a studio. If you want to enjoy making games, don't start a studio. Go work for someone who's like runs a studio, someone who loves the business side of things, needs to be part of your studio. If that studio is going to be successful, you need someone who understands business, who wants to do business in a game development space. If you love making games, if you love game design, if you love game art, that should be the thing that you focus on. And you can still form a studio, but you are going to need to partner up with people, like I say, who are either happier to transition from being a creative to being a business person, or if you're lucky, someone who purely is like business minded, who's looking to get into the game space. Yeah.
I guess running a business is a multifaceted operation. Yeah, if you're going to start a studio, you need to be aware of all those different aspects.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess what was interesting from going back to Matthew's report, we've seen a really big rise in production cost of games over the last 10 years. Now, I'm mostly talking about the top-end AAA games. They used to cost 10 years ago, Call of Duty cost 50 million to make. Now it costs more like 500, 600 million, which is a phenomenal increase. And you can imagine the people investing in those are probably getting pretty nervous. And you can see why companies at that size have had to make redundancies if, games have not come off and been commercially successful, like Concord, PlayStation. I guess my question to you, and it's interesting, is do you think that for indies, of course, the cost of living has gone up, but do you think the cost of producing games has gone up? Do you think there are more challenges in that space?
It's interesting, for indies, because a lot of the indie space is filled with people who work a full-time job, not in games or games adjacent, like maybe they're in games journalism, or they work at another like game studio, and they're working on their own like side projects that they want to make into a big thing. So a lot of the indie space is those kind of people, and I think a lot of those people have been squeezed out now. Like, say, with cost of living, like your availability for spending money on your studio versus paying for your food, paying to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it used to be. I saw quite a few people. This is a good example, actually. A few years back, probably like 5 years back, people who were developers for the finance like space, and they were making like a really good pay packet in finance because obviously finances, and they were hating working in finance because it's not a great like luxurious fun to talk about kind of job, and there's also like the darker side where people lose houses and stuff in finance,
Sure,
so all this stuff. So they were like, I quite like the fun programming side of making quirky little games. And so they, in some cases, they had worked for like a little while and had been planning. So they'd put some money in the bank to fund some development, and then they either like quit their job for a year to see if they could do it, or they carried on working, but they'd saved up a little pocket of money. And I think that now is really, really hard to do. And yeah, so if you're an indie, you kind of need to find ways of being able to get as far as you can without money, essentially. Whether that's like having a small founding team of like 3 or 4 people who agree to like co-found the company, who all agree that the expenditure that they have is their time. And so while they're working like 9 to 5 or whatever, the game project is the thing that they do and enjoy to do, but they know that there's the investment that they can make is time. And so you need to do a lot more now as well in order to get funding. So it used to be that like 3 people who worked at a AAA studio and left could start a new studio, and they could say, hey, look, we used to work at name AAA company, and we worked there for 5 years. We know how to make games. We're going to do it ourselves, start our own studio. And you'd get people going, that sounds like a financial, safe bet. That doesn't really exist anymore. It used to be that you could come to a publisher or an investor and go, here's like a really cool idea. We haven't made it yet, but like we've done all the research. We know the market, blah, blah, blah. And you could get money that way. That doesn't really exist anymore. These days, you kind of almost need to be ready. You need to have all of your pre-production basically done. You need to have done your rapid prototyping. You need to have tested like a whole bunch of things, found all of the fun. You need to be ready to go. You need to go, we're ready, give us the money, we make the thing. But you also need to say, like we know the market. Yes, a publisher or an investor will do their own homework, but if you come to them with knowing it yourself already, then you're in that solid position. Investors are being a lot more cautious, and they're like, if you come to them and there's no idea, no clue, they like go through your pitch, and they say to you, well, what do you think? How much money do you think it will make, or like, how far do you think you can go? When do you think you might exit? All of this kind of stuff, and you go, oh, we don't know, but we know that we're making something. We're ready to go. They're going to go, okay, cool. But there are other people that are ready to go, who have thought about like the price point and the market space and all of these things. Like how are you going to catch the attention of your audience is kind of also part of that conversation. Like, are you on TikTok? Do you have a whole bunch of followers? Like, do you have a Discord with a whole bunch of like eager people waiting in the wings? So you need to like weigh. Yes, it's harder for sure, but I know that sounds like terrifying. But I think the good thing about it is this has kind of always been the case. Like, it's always been hard. It's never been an easy ride, and I think we've had almost far too many people jump into games and get burnt because there was too much talk of how fluffy it is, how easy it can, like, just the fun that you can have. And the people that had success were giving talks, and they were on panels, and they would talk about our game was successful, and it's always hindsight is 2020. Our game was successful because of X, and so everyone goes, cool, we just need to do X and we can be successful. But no, they had someone who understood the business side normally. It's a lot of, it's always been opportunity, preparation meets opportunity. So people were prepared, the opportunity came along, and there's a little bit of like lightning in a bottle, a little bit of like luck and timing and stuff. Because the thing that you rarely see is like, there's a story not that long ago of an indie dev who has worked for, I think maybe even like 5 years, had been working on this thing, had built up like a little community, was so ready to go. They released their game, and the day that they released their game, one of the big studios, this was on Steam, they re-released a whole bunch of their titles, and they just kind of like, in some cases I don't think they'd even jazzed them up a bit. They just like dropped the price. So there was like 10 games that went straight into that like top list because they can pay to be in the top of the list. So on an ordinary day, that indie would have released their game. They would have been able to get in their like the top 10 ranking on Steam, or they would have been able to get some discoverability, and that could have been all of the traction that they would have needed to have had a successful launch and release. But instead, they released to basically being stomped on. So, like, and those stories don't really get out. Like you and I know stats like 9 out of 10 studios fail, but you don't see like people on panels and people like who give talks aren't like, hey, I'm one of the people that does do that because my first studio failed, but but there's not many people. But there's not many people out there talking about the volume of failure. So it has always seemed really like, yay, let's go make games. And I think that now the message is kind of a lot clearer for a lot more people, and I think that's going to be good. I think it means that really skilled, really passionate, really driven people will be the ones that are making the new innovation in the indie game space, and maybe the people that would have got burnt or would not have had a fun time are actually deterred enough not to do it.
That thought process of build it and they will come, we've kind of moved on, and actually if you want to make a successful studio that goes on to have 2 or 3 or more games and increase your kind of employee count and make lots of money from the games industry in general, then there's a lot of strings to your bow that you're going to need to prepare, and it goes beyond just kind of really being able to develop awesome games. I think the other thing is, and you and me are doing quite a lot right now to support those that are going to take this seriously, to support those that are coming in. We're taking part in a boot camp that's coming up. We're creating our own workshops coming later in the year. We've seen that there's a need out there. There's lots of people that are doing this. That they want to do it. They've got into it, and they just need help to understand the business side of things, help to understand the financials, how to self-publish, all of this kind of stuff. So there's going to be support out there for the people that really do just want to take it seriously. Yeah, I guess that's an important thing for like any listeners kind of listening on in, that there are people in the industry, and I think just like getting on LinkedIn, getting on different social platforms and networking with people and asking them where, if you're listening to this and thinking, I really don't know how to set up a business, or I have no idea what to do with marketing, then just kind of chat to people. Obviously there will be people that will maybe charge their services, but actually there are a lot of free great resources around, and just come chat to Bother Stu, because he knows lots of people to talk to. So networking and things like that, it takes a bit of, I remember when I joined the industry, you really don't know how many things are out there, and it takes a bit of time to kind of uncover it all, but the more knowledgeable people you speak to, the easier that journey gets. So don't be put off or afraid of those things. You don't have to do it on your own, I suppose, is the big takeaway there. So outside of the kind of production cost for games, what would you say some of the other kind of potential costs and risk that might be attached to developing a game studio or making games that some of our listeners and developers should be aware of. And I guess the second part to that is what kind of solutions to funding and things like that can studios look for?
So on the budgeting side of things, any money that you get your hands on, you're going to want to be able to understand where to spend that, and it's quite hard in this pre-production phase to figure out especially if you've got gaps in your team. In fact, that's probably the best way to think about it is if you've got a really solid programmer in your team, and you've got someone who's really solid on the design, and maybe you've got someone who's solid on marketing, but you need your main character modeled, rigged, and animated, then maybe there's a bit of money that you can put aside for that. Your main character is going to be one of the most important things in your game build. It's going to be one of the most important things in an early prototype kind of phase. And when it comes to pitching that first demo, like I say, there's going to be certain elements that you just want to stand out like that. Environment. Sure. I'm really sorry to all of you environment artists out there, but environment, there's lots of asset stores out there. There's lots of free assets out there. Or I would say actually that there's still massive value in having an environment artist, even if you haven't got them directly making the art, because there's still an art to understanding environment. So even if you said to an environment artist, especially if they're one of the founding members of your team, if you say to them, we need an environment for this game, but that environment might change drastically over the course of prototyping. Can you hop on, get us some free assets, and make sure that we've got the right kind of look and feel? So, yes, I'm dunking on them a little bit because you're not going to have time, or at least you're not going to want to spend a ton of time creating loads and loads of environment art for something that isn't going to get past pre-production. But things like I said, your main playable character, that's a distinct thing that people are going to notice. So using some asset store character, you also run the risk of, if you're using asset store characters, that other people are using the same asset store character. And publishers see this stuff, publishers and investors, they see a lot of games and they will know, they'll spot it straight away. They'll be like, I saw those assets in the game. I saw that character in the game before. So, yeah, there are certain places where you need to figure out in your budgeting, we don't have a ton of money, what is important to spend on?
Right.
If it's you are struggling with some kind of mechanic or something or even your UI, because it's really hard to find good UI. Even if you just use asset UI, someone who understands UI is really important. So maybe you put some money aside for that, just trying to figure out where is the important gap, where do you need to spend, and beyond that, when you go into full production, it's a whole other ball game. You need to know what it is you need to build out. You need to know who you're going to need to hire and how much that's going to cost. And as we were discussing in a meeting earlier today, a lot of people don't understand what it actually costs to hire someone. If you have never encountered that before, then it could be quite easy for you to Google what does someone get paid for a job, and to go, oh cool, that's what they get paid, but that's not what it's going to cost you to hire someone. So yeah, but like I say, the most of the support that you and I definitely provide people at this moment in time is on this pre-production stage. How can you even get to the point where someone might be giving you money so that you can spend it, and so that you can go into full production, and so that you can have a functioning company that makes games? So yeah, budgeting is a massive, massive thing, obviously. but the benefit that indies have over AAA is that we can and we do do a lot of stuff in pre-production. Like we can do an entire pre-production. We can spend, a lot of us who like work full-time jobs can spend 4 months developing a thing and come up with a project, a game, and it has all it's cost us is time. Like AAA and even AA, or big established studios have money that they have to spend carefully, and it costs them money to develop things. So it's not just time, or it's time and money for them. So we are in the indie space. We're able to do a lot of this stuff really quickly, without too much worry, and we can shift and pivot a lot easier than a big studio. A big studio kind of has their well-known IP and their audience. Their audience is well established, even though they're trying to grow their audience beyond their core audience. They can't make big risky moves. They can't make, as was mentioned earlier, they can't make like a goat simulator. They can't take a risk like that.
Absolutely not.
All of the innovation, and I don't feel like this is too big a thing to say. All of the innovation that happens in games happens in the indie space.
Absolutely.
And generally, if you see innovation in a AAA game, it's because they bought an indie studio. They bought that game. They bought it.
or they've just straight taken the idea, right? Taken the genre and streamlined it. That's a very common practice for a lot of big companies.
That can happen, but they tend not to do that unless they've seen the success. So all of the innovation realistically happens in the indie space. We're the guys who take the risks. We're the guys who come up with just the wackiest little ideas and throw it out there, and people go, "Oh my god, that's crazy," and I love it. Like that happens thanks to us.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of publishers, we've sort of spoken about that and getting funding. Like, are there any other routes? Because I know a lot of people will be talking about self-publishing or crowdfunding grants.
I would say that's kind of becoming a lot more commonplace. Self-publishing. I've worked with like 3 or 4 studios now that have self-published, and it's totally doable. And there's even like new entities out there that have been formed quite recently. We know of Secret Source, obviously, who are a lot more focused on the marketing side of things. So there's freelancers out there as well, who you can hire for shorter stints. So you can kind of do your own. You can DIY for sure, and you don't need to hand out 30% of your game's revenue profits over like the time of life of the game to someone who. Yes, like in a lot of cases, those are good deals. Like you wouldn't be able to do it without them. But actually, that's becoming less and less the case. There is more and more independents and freelance, like solo contractors that offer these services. So you can buy it as and when you need it. If I were to start a new studio today, I probably would start it as like a 2-man team. I might figure out the prototype as quickly as possible, put some money aside, hire someone like MLC to do the asset creation, get that under my belt. I think they also do co-publishing deals now as well. So
sure.
Like that's freaking awesome. But then you could hire either an independent freelancer to do your marketing. To help you with your social media, and there are even like deals that you can do with those people that might be a bit more certain percentage because of the high risk, but again, it's not going to be 30%. It's going to be like a much smaller percentage. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think also like indies shouldn't be afraid of co-dev. Like team up with another studio, especially if it's like another studio that is kind of doing bits, doing okay, and they're able to do a co-development deal with you where your studio isn't quite as well known, so you're leveraging like how well known they are and how much success they've managed with their games. And so you work on them together, you release it together. I think we might see a lot of that happening. I think we already are, to be honest with you. I know, as an example, MLC have, I think, well, they've certainly got a good handful of studios that they're supporting, like projects that they're working on, and I've seen they've been doing releases, and they've got good relationships with publishers. So there's lots of different ways to do it now, so that you don't need to just try and do it all by yourself, and you shouldn't. It's massive. I mean, obviously there are still solo devs who have the solo dev life. They have a job that makes them, maybe they work in finance. And you see that these guys, though, they tend to have really cool devlogs on like YouTube. And they've got like these nice little cut tos of them like having coffee in the morning and having a nice like breakfast. And here's like what they've been working on this month, and like here's how well the game's doing. And those organic journeys still happen. And a lot of those guys don't want to get in bed with anyone. Like they don't want to be partnered with a publisher or whatever. They're doing it all organic, and you can still do that, but you don't have to. you don't have to do it all alone. And I think those guys are like, I mean, we call them unicorns, right? But I think they're kind of like the guy who moves out to the woods, who knows how to do carpentry and wants to build his own house. Like that's that mindset. And it's absolutely perfectly fine for you to have that mindset. But I think, if you want to do it and you want to do it for real, you want to have like a successful long-term business, then there's lots of people that you can do it with.
That's nice. Yeah, I think that's really important. There's a lot of different pathways to success and to kind of running a studio and releasing successful games. And you don't need to sell your left arm and several other limbs to kind of get there. Exactly. So depending on the situation you're in and the help that you need, and that, I guess that comes back to that point we were talking about earlier of like really understanding like what your runway is, understanding like your own knowledge in the kind of space, like where the gaps are, and then basically there's a whole sea of service providers, not just publishers and investors, that can help you. And actually that reminded me, I actually just wanted to share with everyone, if you haven't seen the Global Games Industry Guide, which is a product that's put together for free by Liam Twose, and check that out, because it's not everyone in the games industry, but if you're at this point where you're developing a game and you're looking for service providers or you're looking for organizations to help you out, it's like a really amazing just like Trello board of everyone A to Z that could possibly help you, although you'll probably spend like a week reading it on its own. But so there's some really good info in there.
The best thing to do, like, and I've always said this and it's always been true, is to just like get out there and physically network. The games industry in the UK is kind of, yes, it's massive, but we all kind of really know each other. Like, there's all of the studios for sure that are, doing quite well. We all tend to see each other at the big networking events that happen out there, and some of the smaller ones that happen out there. Networking is like the biggest thing in game development.
For sure.
Bigger than any other industry that I've worked in. And I've worked in the creative industries. And in networking it's so important for indies, and it's so powerful as well. Like being able to, like in the first couple of years when I was getting into the industry myself, every time I went networking, I'd be talking about the project that I'm working on. And you just kind of do naturally talk about, we're having this problem or this thing isn't quite working, and God, if only that thing would work this week. And that normally that person goes, oh, well, we thought of this, have we tried this? Like, and you go, oh, no, I haven't. And even you have conversations after, like I end up sitting at my desk working on it. and I'm on a video call with that person that I like just met, and everyone is so helpful.
So yeah, I think personally it's rare for me to ever go to a networking event and not come away with a really helpful contact or a gem of information that I just wouldn't have got by doing my research at home, because you can have a two-way dialogue, and that is just, yes, like you're saying, it's really, really impactful. So let's move on to the next question. We've seen Steam releases. This number gets like scarily bigger every year. There has been 19,000 Steam games released on Steam last year, which is crazy. You know, when we're thinking about the level of competition that comes with that, if you're an indie right now looking to make a game and you want to get it seen by people up against those other 18,999 games that are coming out, what's your advice to you on kind of how to get the cut through, and how to market your game and how to be seen, I suppose.
The scariest part of that stat is the second half of that stat. There's 19,000 releases last year, and 80% of them made less than $5,000.
That is very, scary for sure.
But what I will say about that, right, is that a huge volume of people who make those games and put them up on Steam aren't trying to make money. They're not trying to make millions of pounds. Loads of them are people who just make games for fun. Like a phenomenal number of them are people who, and then you've got a wave of people who are making their first game. So they might be trying to like figure stuff out and make some kind of money, but they're at the beginning of their journey. And then, you know, it's all tiered up. So
sure,
yes, 80% making less than $5,000 sounds scary. But there's 20%, and that 20% are the 20% of people who are taking it seriously and are trying to make money and are doing the marketing. They're all over TikTok, all of these things. So, it's we're only going to see that number go up. The accessibility to be able to make a game is like over the last 10 years, the conversation has always been, the barrier to entry has got really low. The barrier to entry's got really low. The bar's never been lower. It's on the floor. Like it's beyond through the floor. My son right now is interested in making games, and I'm gonna start showing him how to do that. Like he's gonna be able to do that. He's 6, so you know, like
19,001 games. Yeah.
Yeah. It's never been easier to make a game. The hard part is making a good game, understanding how to make a good game. And possibly the even harder part is understanding how to market, sell that game, get a deal, like get it pitched to publishers, like get the publisher on board, and have it all, have it work. Yeah. So discoverability, it's always been like one of the key issues for us. Like, how do we? When I released my first game, which was a mobile game, it went up onto the app stores, and the app stores were flooded. So, did anyone see my game? No. Yeah. But that, you know, again, that for me, that was like the first game that I like properly released. Sure. I would love to bring it back, but the code would not stand up to today's scrutiny on platforms. But yeah, so you need, this is again like part of understanding who your target audience is, understanding where they are, where do they live online, is it on TikTok, like is that where your audience lives? A huge audience for most people is likely to be on TikTok, but maybe they're on Instagram, maybe they're, God forbid, on Twitter/X, maybe they're on Blue Sky now, like maybe they're on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's pretty big, and depending on what kind of game you're releasing, you know, like where is your audience? Obviously, mainstream media is a lot harder to tap into, but it all starts with like where can you get that spark and in some cases, like you use whatever social media platform it is that you're going to use to build a community. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's not exactly insanely hard to create a Discord and start to gather people into it. Although what I would say is, ideally, what you really want is a website, like however you're doing that, and on your website you want if this game sounds interesting to you, if you want to hear more about it, sign up to a mailing list. Build a mailing list, get your mailing list to like a couple of hundred people, and then launch a Discord and say, hey everyone, you can now talk to us like asynchronously in a back and forth kind of way. No more are we just dropping you emails once a month about like how we're doing. You can all come and help us like talk about the game, and you can start to build super fans. So you launch a Discord where you're probably it's hard to say what the conversion rate is from mailing list to Discord. Like some people, it depends also how long it takes you to go from starting a mailing list to getting those couple of hundred people. If it took you like 6 months and you've got 200 people, maybe like half of those people have already unsubscribed and left, and you may or may not know about it depending on what system you're using. Or they may just not be opening your emails anymore. There's lots of systems you can set up to find out that stuff, but for people who don't want to spend a ton of time doing all that, you want to, as quickly as possible, once you've got like a couple of hundred people, get them over into Discord, get them into a conversation, like, here's what we're doing this week. And it's even hard to know like when's the best time to do that, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, you want to be at a certain phase in your production, in your pre-production, where things are happening fairly regularly. Because in the early stages, yes, things might be happening rapidly, but they're changing rapidly. And then there's like a little stagnation point where you're figuring stuff out. And then there's a point where you're like, okay, well, we want to start making characters, or we want to start making environments. And those are really good times to start talking to your new little community, saying, we're doing this, we're bringing this, we're thinking about plugging this in. What do you guys think about these mechanics? All of this kind of stuff.
Personally, you often hear people think, a lot of game developers and things like that often say to me that, marketing is something that should come towards the end of your production cycle, but actually
100% not.
Yeah, you should be doing it from the get-go, because market research is really important. Understanding, we've spoken about understanding who your community are, but actually then just like talking to people and showing them prototypes, showing them your characters, showing them things you're designing, and just having those early bits of feedback is hugely critical to your process. Like, it should be, help you reflect and be critical on your game development production. So
I think, like, once you've got people in that Discord, once you've started building that community, like, these people are your audience. They're interested in what you're building.
Yeah.
And you're having conversations with them regularly, and you're going to understand what things they find funny, what things they will engage with, because you see it in your Discord. So when it comes to your marketing, you already know what your audience is interested in. Your marketing will have a tone of voice that you have built because you've been having this conversation, and you've been having it in like a relatively safe space. Discord is like a safe little, like, if you post something on Twitter like we used to, like, hate comments immediately, right? Or just like, it always just came back. It never
negative feedback. Yeah.
It was a gamble. You're just pulling that lever. You're posting whatever you're posting, and like, it's going to vibe with someone, sure, but this way you have a safe space where you can talk to these people, and you can test out all of this stuff before you go public with whatever statements it is. Because you can say something in a private Discord with like a couple of hundred people, and you can phrase it in a way that's like, we're thinking of like saying this or doing this with the game, and they're going to go, ooh, like, that gives off this kind of a vibe though. And so you go, oh, we didn't know that, because we've just been thinking this is a fun thing. And so, imagine if you'd have just posted that straight away, like that was just part of your mark, like, you're up in flames. Yeah. So It's really important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think, I mean, you said a couple of things there, like, building up these kind of super fans and really kind of like A/B testing some of your ideas and your communications, and really kind of getting that done earlier will save you potential big embarrassments later down the line, and it will really help guide what the game should be. I mean, there's a lot of things nowadays about devs needing to work with the community to build a game, and I think that's it's a really rewarding experience for players that want to get involved. They like what you're building. That's a really powerful. You're building up long-term loyal fans there, and then it's really kind of how you translate those and those personas, as you spoke about, like understanding what their needs are and what kind of things they're into, and how you kind of build that out into broader marketing communication plans once you get to that stage where you're ready to start getting close to release and getting close to kind of bringing the game out, and you want to build your audience to a much bigger number from a sales point of view. So yeah, having that happening early is really crucial. So I guess in terms of, I mean, obviously there's tons we could talk about around discoverability, but beyond discoverability and actually talking to publishers and trying to get signed, because we've seen in Matthew Ball's report that investment is down in a big way, and both me and you will know, and other people, listeners, will know that publishers are struggling as well and not signing on as many titles. So have you got any tips to devs that are working on a game in terms of jumping to the front of the queue or things that they can do maybe they don't think of that, and I guess we touched on a few of these, but yeah, kind of thinking about how best to talk to publishers and how to pitch to them?
I think the key thing with talking to publishers is kind of getting to know that publisher before you even have a conversation with them. Completely consume their website and everything that they. In some cases, that's actually quite hard. But also there are events, and I went to Gameo towards the end of last year. And there were publisher roundtables. So I spoke with a publisher from PCube and a publisher from Xbox. Publishing scouts, I should say. It should be very clear, scouts.
Sure.
But having conversations with those scouts means that you get to... I mean, obviously they're not allowed to... There's a lot of stuff they're not allowed to say, but there's loads of stuff that they are allowed to say. They can tell you the kind of pitches that they've been seeing. They can tell... They're not going to be able to tell you the games exactly, but they could say, for example, we've seen a lot of games like this, and you could be like, oh, okay. But they'll also tell you these are the kind of games that we're looking at right now. You can, with scouts, you can say, if this kind of game was being pitched at you today, do you think you would pick it up? And they can say to you, well, no, because that's not the kind of game that we're looking at right now. With some publishers, the genres at which they will take on are a little bit more evergreen, and they might always at least have a punt out, I guess, have a punt with. But yeah, there are lots of ways for you to get info on the publishers before you even have that first conversation or that first pitch to them, so that you know what they're looking for and whether or not you're going to be wasting your time ultimately, because you might have an amazing pitch that will do really well with a certain publisher, but you might end up being really discouraged if the first three that you pitch to all just say no, because for a whole bunch of reasons. But if it's not the game, not the kind of game that they're looking for right now. I think it's a lot harder to get kind of that insider knowledge from going through their website, but from going through their website you can see games that they've published before, whether or not they've had a game like yours before, and in some cases Modern Wolf was a good example actually, because it had the games all had a same kind of mood to them. So you would although the game mechanics and gameplay and stuff was all different, they all certainly you knew the kind of mood that you were going to get with their kind of games. I don't know if that exists so much anymore. I think publishers are a lot more able to accept, like, this is clearly a good deal. This is clearly going to do well out there. But also, one of the key things that they will be looking for is, can this team deliver what they say they're going to deliver?
Sure.
And there's lots of ways you can get that across. And I would say also that you can have more than one conversation with a publisher before you pitch. I encourage any studio that I work with to talk to publishers, talk to the scouts at the very least multiple times. Just keep touching base, because and normally, because the preliminary conversation that you've had with that scout has gone quite well, and they've said like some nice things about your game. Perfect. The next thing that you want to do next time you talk to them is show progress. They saw you at this stage. It's been a month. Like, what's happened in a month? Have you managed to like get like some good traction going? Like, have you started a Discord? Have you got people in your Discord? Have you got more people in your Discord than when you last spoke? Has the game gone from this cool thing that they thought was nice to actually this is quite an amazing thing, and we just added this like mechanic and everyone's excited about it, and we'd love for you to try it and tell us what you think of it. Like, just keep having those conversations, because the showing traction, especially with game scouts, because they're going to go back to their boss and they're going to go, look, I spoke to these guys at this stage, seems quite interesting, we should keep an eye on them. And the boss is going to go, cool. And that's going to be it, right? So next time, if this scout's come back to him going, you know, that game that I was talking about that I thought was going to do quite well, this is where they're doing right now. And they will either say, I think we should have a conversation with them, or if you've said, I think we're ready for a conversation, then you've got this good relationship and you've been showing traction and all of the good things have been going good, hopefully. So it's the same with test and showcase often. Like, get feedback often. It's the same for publishers. Like, you want to test and get feedback often.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it is, although it is a very competitive market, publishers want to speak to good developers that are making cool games, and it is a long-term relationship. And the other thing you said that's really, really important is that, publishers come in all shapes and sizes. There are, publishers that are doing big multi-million pound deals. There are publishers that are doing, $100,000, $200,000. There are publishers that are focused purely on marketing. Some are purely on finance. I mean, there's so many different shapes and sizes. That is why, like you're saying, we have to do our homework, because you want to turn up to the conversation prepared. You want to make a good impression, because, like you also said, it's a long-term relationship, and if you've shown you've done your homework, you're the right fit for them, but they think maybe your game's not quite there yet, then there's a lot of value in you holding a really good relationship there, so you can come back later on and keep that and get to a point where hopefully you can sign a deal. I think
there's also this thing where people tend to be scared to like have that first conversation and to not just be fully ready. And I get where it comes from. It's from that old, like, you only get to make a first impression, like, that first great impression once. And that is true, obviously. You don't want to meet a scout, be drunk off your face and tell them that their hair looks stupid or whatever. You still do want to make a good impression the first time, but it's not like that first conversation that you have with a scout isn't likely to be the one where they go, I'm going to sign you. That's great. Like, that's really unlikely.
Yeah.
Unless like there's some insane thing that you've got going on.
I think they'd get in a lot of trouble if they did that. Yeah.
So obviously make a good impression. Be professional and look good, and don't be wasted. But the conversation just simply needs to be like, what's going on at the publishers? Like, what kind of games are you seeing? Have those conversations. Like, start that relationship. Be cool, be kind, be friendly, all of that stuff. But yeah, understand that even if you're pitching to them, even if it's the first time you're pitching, you scouts especially, like, they tend to be really nice people. They're not like looking to, yeah,
Not scary,
like,
yeah.
yeah. It all seems scarier than it is, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, even if it's that first pitch, like, and they go, not right now or whatever, you can normally get feedback on whether or not it's a not right now kind of a no, or whether it's a not for us. And if it's a not for us, you can still be cool and polite, because you might come back to them again.
Sure.
It might not be this game, it might be another game. You
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen to your project. But also, you can just say to them, if you're able, do you have some time to let me know, like, give me some feedback on my pitch, and was there anything in there where that would have just made you think straight away, like, this isn't going to work. And I mean, normally if they think that it's a not right now conversation, they're going to do that anyway, and they're going to say, you kind of need to understand this better. Your game hasn't quite got this yet. Come back and talk to us again. But yeah, if you're not getting that conversation, then you can still probe and you can still get value from that pitch. And like I say, you're still building a relationship with that person. You're still going to see them at networking events, and you're still going to see them out and about, probably. And if you want to pitch them in future, make sure it's a good experience.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Stu. Listen, I realise, as per normal, we've been talking forever. So I think this is probably a good point to wrap it up. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult and challenging times, but there are lots of ways through this. And yeah, if anyone listening wants to come to one of our events, chat to me or Stu or anyone else, and lots of the cool people that float around in the community, then join the Discord, come down to one of our online events and or offline events. And yeah, we hope to see you soon. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Bye. Cheers,
Bye.
Stu.